everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the Recruitment Roundup podcast, which is brought to you by BMS Performance. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, BMS Performance is a specialist sales and marketing recruitment consultancy. For the last 30 years, we've been helping businesses across the UK recruit for vacancies at every level. How's it going, Sam?
Hey, all
All
good,
good?
Mike. All good, all good. How's everything with you?
Oh, good. Oh, good. And we've just been reflecting, haven't we, before this on how mental these first 2 weeks back have been. And yeah, I think we wanted to kick off the podcast, didn't we, just with a bit of an overview of the market for anyone listening, sales directors, hiring managers, internal recruitment teams, and of course any recruiters that also might be listening to this to give you an idea of sort of what we're seeing. And then we wanted to move on and talk about as well what's holding companies back from recruiting in January based on our experiences so far, because there's definitely some common themes coming through. What's your take on these first 2 weeks back, Sam?
Oh, Mike, do you know what? I think it's an incredible time right now. I just think it's been relentless in a positive way, of course. I just don't remember a January like it in terms of maybe my time in this industry and like working for BMS. I just think it's been non-stop. It's been active, both equally from a company side, but equally on the other end from a candidate perspective. There's just been lots of companies, lots of confidence in the market, lots of people looking for jobs. It's just it's a great time to be operating, shall we say, with this pros and cons.
Yeah, totally. Pros and cons, which we're going to dip into. I would say it's almost taken me by surprise in the sense of how quickly the market has ramped up to a level that we've not seen for easily 2 years, both on the job volume front, also on the candidate side as well. Your speciality is sales recruitment within the healthcare medical devices sector, and that's just started with a bang, hasn't it?
100%. It's been so encouraging, and there's just lots of opportunity, lots of companies looking for talent, right? I just think coming into this side of the year, I don't know, maybe it's got something to do with us being 3 years out of the pandemic, also the confidence within the economy. I think maybe with potentially with the all that kind of stuff. I think subconsciously it's just a time where lots of companies are looking at it and going, 2024, we want to be aggressive. We've got great plans, be it new products or restructures within the marketplace that we're operating in. I've not seen anything like the medical healthcare market. Has been buoyant, to say the least. With lots of companies looking for talent.
And would you say that's at all levels of recruitment?
100%.
You're mid-senior to your senior, like wherever you've seen the volumes.
It's literally at all levels. Entry level. This could be typical. Graduate roles looking for their first opportunity within sort of sales within the marketplace, but that's right the way through mid-level account manager, territory manager stuff, clinical roles right the way through to a regional manager, a national manager level across, and then right the way through to distribution manager, sales director, etc. It's been everyone is on the march for talent, and it doesn't show. Well, I'm not seeing any signs of it sort of slowing down. All the conversations that I've been having in the past 2 weeks are, we want to be recruiting right now.
Yeah, we've seen it's a similar story across every vertical that we operate across. And what we've seen as well is vacancies, yes, due to replacements, but an awful lot due to growth. And I think a lot of companies held back last year because it was fairly uncertain. We come through 2 boom years post-COVID, but it does feel like there's a lot more confidence out there, which is positive for everyone. I often think recruiters are a great barometer for the economy, just generally speaking. So it's been mental busy, but on the candidate side too, as always, you get an influx of candidates in January, but that has felt heavier as well. So it's good news all round. I would say the market is verging back on towards the candidate-driven side. I'm sure you'd agree as well. And like you said, with a busy market on the candidate side and more jobs out there, there's pros and cons stats. So we wanted to come on today and talk about what we've seen and experiences that we can share as to why companies are struggling to recruit. Now, we appreciate we're at the time of recording this, we're about 2.5 weeks back, so some people might only be 1.5 weeks back, but nevertheless, hopefully some good insights to share. Yeah, so I think where we wanted to kick this off, Sam, was to talk about advert response and the fact we're seeing sheer volumes of it coming through. So I'll let you lead on that point, because that was something that you wanted to get stuck into.
100%, Mike. It's advert response is absolutely crazy, to say the least, at this time, and this is, we're seeing it on the back of the adverts that we advertise, but also a lot of the companies that we're speaking to. There has just been an influx of loads of candidates applying for roles, and ultimately that's then meaning, from a company point of view, that there is that sense of confidence that seeing the right person that we might be looking for potentially on paper, but then by the time that they are potentially speaking to said candidate, based on again the market conditions, said candidate might be gone. So we are seeing an influx of of CVs coming through on a consistent basis. And it's definitely got its pros and cons.
Yeah. What are some of the cons as far as you're concerned in this? If you're a direct employer, let's just say now, when you're recruiting for a BDM vacancy, you've got a load of advert response coming through. You might be sat there thinking, this is great. I've got 50 CVs, on my desk. Quick glance at them. Some of them look all right. What can some of the cons be of that?
In terms of the cons, Mike, it's when I think about seeing loads of advert response, challenge number one is ultimately time. It's the time to work through these adverts, speak to the amount of people, find out whereabouts they're up to within their different recruitment processes. So that all is that resourcing from a time point of view. The point number two is it's just that creates a false sense of confidence. It's the potential false economy, right? And you seeing all these different people. If I'm a sales manager, sales director, or talent, anyone working within the recruitment process, it's kind of like fool's gold, where you are thinking, yes, got 50 different applicants coming for a role. A few of these guys and girls look really good for our opportunity. But then, when that then boils down to it, there's a higher chance of potentially missing out on these people because of, the false sense of economy within these people and whereabouts they're up to in their process.
Yeah, because again, there's more opportunities in the market, so people are going to have more going on. So what does that mean? Well, you might be able to recruit a higher caliber sales professional from the active market, but you've got to be quick.
You've got to be complacent.
What we're saying here is, if I'm sat there on 50 CVs and I'm thinking, oh, these look good, I'll get down to speaking to them later on in the week. Practical advice tip would be to get onto it straight away. Get a good CV coming through. At this moment in time, you're going to be dealing with loads of advert response. Call the candidate. That'll be a novel approach. I guarantee the majority of candidates that are applying directly will be getting emails. That email falls into the junk. Ring the candidate, assess them, get them booked in, and move quickly. Because I think a lot of companies think, we've got loads of adverts, loads of applications coming through. We're all good. We don't need help. We've got, we've got the best candidate in this bunch, which you're only seeing the best that's applied to the advert, not necessarily the very best person on the market at the time you're recruiting. But the key is speed, isn't it? I think that's where it can lead to a false sense of confidence, and it can make you sit there and think, hey, we've got a good amount of people here. We'll speak to them later on this week. By the time you've spoken to them, they've already got 2-3 interviews. They're at a second stage. They're bought into another company because they've met them, and you lose out on that person because we were too slow in following up on that application that came through. Anything you'd add on that point to underline it?
No, I think that's it, Mike. I think you've summarized it really well. It's just that sense of complacency that can creep up, within that recruitment process. It's just that sense of, they're coming through. There's loads. I've seen, 10 people that look really good. Tell you what, we'll go through these ad response next week. We'll start calling them next week or the week after that. And, in this market, when we're speaking about, just how competitive it is, you've got to be on it. And if you're not, you're going to miss out. And no one wants to miss. You want to make sure that you recruit the role with the right person.
Moving on to interview processes, something that we've seen here, especially which has surprised me, to be fair, these past few weeks back, has been a number of companies that have been very stern in the fact that we need to do first interviews face to face.
Yeah.
Which has had a negative impact, 100%. So I wanted to talk around that and around flexibility. Because, again, if we've got candidates that have got 4 or 5 opportunities and, the 3 of them are by Teams interview for the first stage and 1 is face to face, then, and we've spoken to hiring managers like this throughout our career that will say, well, if they want to, if they're really interested, they'll make the trip. They'll come and see us face to face. And that's just not true, is it?
Yeah. It's not true, Mike, and this is such a this is creeping up and it's creeping up. I think maybe it's because of the fact that the pandemic's been out by a few years, and we are starting to move.
So sorry to cut in. Do you think as well it's because of companies pushing more face-to-face meetings now?
Yeah, exactly. I think it could certainly be that, in the sense of, like, right now, companies are pushing more to be in front of, their clients. We are in time coming around to the start of the year. More and more people are pushing for those face-to-face meetings and opportunities to, shake the hands and look at the whites of inside someone's eyes, going back to what it was like, which is great. However, especially at first stage within recruitment, the market and the conditions just do not allow that, and they're not allowing it. And and if we think about what this looks like in real time, and we're speaking about top candidates coming to the marketplace, and what does that look like, due to how competitive it is. If I'm a candidate and if I've potentially got 3 to 5 opportunities in there, and all these opportunities could be really great, paying a similar salary, both great companies with, excellent benefits and good culture, there isn't a lot in that. But then when the interview process is then went in, and then 3 to 4 of these businesses are saying, you can meet us on Teams, but then, 1 or 2 of them are saying, we need to meet you face to face. And geographically speaking, the candidate lives potentially 3 hours away from site. What does that look like? And naturally, humans will tend to pick the least path of resistance because of what's actually involved to make themselves available for the interview.
And just on that point as well, the path of least resistance, because a lot of hiring managers will say, again, just to go back and reiterate what I said earlier, well, if they don't want to come see us face to face and they're not that interested, they're not taking the path of least resistance because they want to. Ordinarily, they may love the opportunity and they're really keen to interview, but the interview process in terms of a first stage just isn't practical, because they're like you said, they're in a full-time job. They've made the conscious decision that they want to leave that job and they want to see what's out there in the market. But their ability to be able to take a full day off in some instances to go to an interview at short notice, they just can't do it. And then they've got all these other companies that are prospecting them, come and interview with us. They're getting approaches on LinkedIn. So there's always compromise to be made here. So I'd say for companies that I've found this to be a challenge, advice is to look at what you get out of that initial first stage interview. How can you replicate it over Teams? And then what can we then bring into a second stage, which is going to be face to face, to compensate for what we've not had in that first stage meeting? Because once the candidate is brought in, and we say this all the time, don't we? More often than not, they're then happy to take that day off,
extra mile,
plan it, because they're bought into you. Because people, yes, they want to work for great companies, but they're more bought into, the leaders that they want to work for. So once they've got that buy-in and they've met you over Teams, they've understood about the culture, you'll be able to get that face-to-face meeting in. But I can think of 4 or 5 instances over the last few weeks whereby we've seen companies lose out on candidates because of inflexibility around interview processes. So it's definitely a point worth talking about, I think. What's next on your agenda?
So, Mike, point number 3 for my agenda is definitely if you're working with a recruitment partner, just waiting for CVs before making that decision on feedback, interview times and dates, and then ultimately having a negative impact in terms of slowing down that recruitment process. So on the other end, it's been that side, when engaging with potential companies, working with a recruitment partner, it's that, we're going to wait to see, a short list of said amount of candidates before actively moving the process forward. So definitely seeing that creep up quite a bit. I don't know if I think you might agree with that one, Mike.
Yeah, no, I do. I love this one. This is one we can get stuck into. Right, so let's paint the picture to be totally clear, so people that are listening can understand what we mean. So as a recruitment partner, take the brief from the hiring manager or the person that's leading recruitment for that role. You go through the brief, and typically you want to find out when they can interview. The reason that this is important to the recruitment partner is that if they're swamped in a sea of vacancies, and all these vacancies are contingent vacancies, so no win, no fee, that means that the recruitment partner is taking on the risk because they can advertise the job, searches, put in the resource internally, which all has to be paid for, with no guarantee of filling the role. But that's the game that we play when we work contingently. However, by having interview dates, your recruitment partner will then know when they need to focus on sourcing candidates for a role. If they haven't got interview dates, it becomes very difficult, and that's where your role can sometimes lose prioritization within the internal market that exists within your recruitment partner. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Good overview. Okay, cool. So what we typically find is if we take a brief, and this has happened in a couple of scenarios where a client will say, we need to see CVs before we can give interview dates. What ordinarily happens there is we send the CV. This candidate is in process with other opportunities outside of whoever the recruitment partner is, with other recruitment partners or through their own methods. So once the CV has been sent, if there's then a delay for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, sometimes a week, that dampens the candidate experience. And then when the recruiter goes back to the candidate and says, oh, great news, such and such companies come back, they'd like to interview you. Candidate, unfortunately, has got 2 second stage interviews. Heads are in those companies. They want to work for them businesses. They've also got a job that we're doing. So guess what they do? They just want to pause any more first interviews until they've seen these processes through. So the impact of not giving interview dates to your recruitment partner can mean that you miss out on the top talent. If your recruitment partner's got interview dates to work to, they can also agree a date with you as to when they can go through CVs. So having that process laid out clearly so that both parties can collaborate, agreed, and onto agreed sort of timescales, the process will be more fluid and we're less likely to lose people. Even more important in this type of voluminous, candidate-driven market, I would say. So, anything you'd add to that, Sam? But that's typically what we're seeing, isn't it? And that's advice that gives any company working with a recruitment partner, or even if you don't work with recruitment partners, you've got an internal recruitment team or in-house recruiters. They'll still need the same level of commitment, because if they're working if they're carrying 80, 90 jobs and across a huge range of disciplines, they still need to know when to focus on your job.
Excellent, Mike. To be honest with you, it's very difficult for me to add on much value on top of that. I think you summarized that really well. And we then think about, I'm thinking about what that impact is on a negative point of view if we don't have that kind of commitment, you know, with the client that you're engaging with. You know, even if you work in-house within recruitment or as an external recruitment partner, it's all about what does that mean to that, you know, to you who's recruiting for the role. That leads to, you know, like you said, it is ultimately prioritizing the two opportunities that they have at second stage that, you know, they've got that warmer feeling about, that they've been working on, you know, that have moved at a faster time. But then ultimately it's then that is delaying that time to hire. It's then, you know, meaning that a vacancy is going to be open for a longer amount of time. Whereas, you know, you've spoken to your recruitment partner, you've spoken to your in-house recruiter, they've understood the brief and the sense of what you are looking for. And, you know, I imagine there's been that level of trust within that relationship. And if you trust someone to do a job in this market, why don't you trust that person to then see that process through? So it then, you know, I think you've summarized it really well.
It's working in partnership, isn't it? It's working in partnership. I think, you know, that is a signal of working in partnership. If we're saying, right, you understand the brief, I trust you, here's my diary for interviews. Even if you want to see CVs before, let's have a call, let's book that time in. Opposed to, I think, that environment where a company says, I will not give you any of my time until I've at least seen a CV. That's very much, you know, you've got a parent and child model. It's very much, you know, you're the provider to us. You know, it's not partnership, is it?
It's quite transactional.
Someone's like, on a pedestal, I'll give you this if you give me that, rather than you've understood what we're looking for. Let's work together. Let's collaborate so that we can both achieve the mutually beneficial outcome, which is, you know, filling the vacancy and then helping you retain that talent and, you know, grow your team. Cool. So Sam, if I'm a hiring manager and I'm recruiting directly for a vacancy, how would you advise me to find out if the candidate I'm considering making an offer to is open to accepting a counter offer?
Yeah, Mike, it's a great question. And I think, you know, there's ways to really go about this, but then the key thing in terms of really looking to understand, you know, a candidate's susceptibility to accepting a counter offer, that got those two out. It's literally first to make sure that we've understood the candidate's motivations and reasons for wanting to leave. You know, really looking to understand why the candidate has come to market, you know, and what does that look like? You know, are they on the market because they're unhappy within their current position? You know, are they on the market because they're feeling a bit demotivated? You know, and are they in the market because they're looking for progression? You know, so these understanding that, you know, is key first. Following up on the back of that is looking to understand what has this person done to try and alleviate all these feelings that they have. You know, have they met with their manager? Have they asked the difficult questions? Have they asked, you know, could, you know, the company do to support them to ensure that, you know, this isn't an issue for them moving forward? You know, so you are directly asking that question. Completely appreciate that you're not happy with this. You know, what have you done to try and alleviate, you know, that? So to asking that kind of question in a practical sense, listen to that answer, understanding that answer, and, you know, being happy with the response that you are given. But that needs to have happened as a process. They need to have really engaged and tried to, you know, get the answers that they're looking for you to know that, you know, they're not going to be susceptible to a counter offer. And then on the top of that is then, you know, asking the questions, asking a few direct, you know, not as direct, but, you know, some few challenging questions that would paint that real picture, you know, to you. So it would be, you know, asking a question regarding, you know, what could your current company, you know, do to keep you? You know, what's been the experience within when other people have resigned? You know, what has the business done to keep hold of them?
I'll give you that indication.
You know, so you're looking for little indicators, little nudges, and if you're hearing that, you know, well, you know, when X resigned, you know, they got counter offer. So you know that could happen, but if you're not hearing that, but also if you're hearing that, you know, what could they, you know, I really like that question. What could they do to keep you? And the response that is, oh, well, if they do this and they do that, you know, obviously not a good sign. They're probably not as committed. But if you're getting an answer which really paints a picture that, there is absolutely nothing that they could do to keep me. If I'm offered this role, I'm going to be accepting that, you're more times than often, more times than not onto a winner there.
Yeah, and there's no 100% guarantees, is all
Yeah,
right, because we deal with people. People
yeah,
are unpredictable.
yeah,
But I think that advice you've given there
yeah,
is just
yeah,
golden. I really
yeah,
like the idea of using the interview process
yeah,
to understand exactly what the candidate has done to try
yeah,
and solve the issues as to
yeah,
why
yeah,
they aren't happy. And you'll get from that, for example, if the candidate lives, I don't know, in Swindon,
yeah,
and the company have decided to relocate the office to Nottingham,
yeah,
there's nothing the company can do to keep them. However, if the reason for leaving could be because they've had a change in the personal circumstances and they're finding the patch too big to cover now,
yeah,
and that's the driver for moving,
yeah,
and they've not had a conversation around trying to make the patch smaller,
yeah.
then that's potentially
Potentially an issue.
a counter offer risk,
Yeah,
because that is something the company can change to make
yeah,
that person's life
easy.
easier.
Yeah,
So these are the sorts of, just an example there of the sorts of things to
yeah,
consider looking out for. And I think that question there, what could they offer you to keep you?
yeah,
Great question. Tonality is key.
yeah,
Absolutely key on that. And
yeah,
it's how you deliver that with a
yeah,
empathetic
yeah,
tone to
yeah,
not put the candidate in an uncomfortable position, because it is a
yeah,
challenging question.
yeah,
But it's an important one to ask. I think
yeah,
another point off the back of this, just to finish off on,
yeah,
before we round up the podcast, and I know you've had some
yeah,
first-hand experience of this over the last
yeah,
few weeks,
yeah,
but companies not offering at the right level.
yeah,
I think we went through a period of time, didn't we, in the last
yeah,
6 months of last year, where salaries settled, and they actually we saw candidates taking jobs even on less that they were
on,
that they were already on, which sounds mad because we were going through a crisis of cost of living, but there was less jobs out there. So
yeah,
that's naturally what you see when the market becomes that way, where there's less jobs,
yeah,
but there's more candidates. So we saw people moving for less than 10% of an increase, sometimes a bit less. But
yeah,
those candidates that were getting 15-20%, 12 months ago, increase on the basics, that
yeah,
kind of died a death, didn't it?
yeah,
We've seen some experiences where companies have not been offering at the right
yeah.
level, which has had its challenges.
Yeah, Mike, it's a really, really great point. And just to be clear from my side, I definitely don't want to be speaking about this in the sense of, companies are offering less because, this is what they are wanting to be doing and all that. The example that I probably want to be getting into is just on the back of an interview process that's been conducted. There's been complete transparency from the candidate in terms of initially looking to understand what they are looking for to
Yeah,
be recruited for the position. The information's been clear. The company is fully aware of what the salary expectations are to be able to candidate, and then at the end of the recruitment process, ultimately offering less than what the candidate is expecting. And this is has happened quite a obviously firsthand for myself, but we're definitely seeing this creep in, you know and it's all about what that impact has,
yeah,
negatively. Ultimately, there is no way to frame this in a positive one.
yeah.
Negative impact that has on the candidate when they do receive the job offer.
So the experience of this that I've
Yeah,
seen in recently is,
yeah,
here's a salary offer.
yeah.
Let us know what the
What they say.
candidate says.
Yeah,
There is some, no, not there might be, there
yeah,
is some room for
yeah,
negotiation.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
fortunately, they're working with a recruitment partner that
yeah.
was able to handle
Find
this
out.
situation.
Yeah,
But had that process have been managed directly,
yeah,
I think the candidate would have exited the process on the
yeah,
basis that he would feel that they were undervaluing him.
yeah,
Not necessarily the company's fault, because they're operating in a way that they feel is commercially astute. However,
yeah,
market conditions loads going on, advice to companies, ask candidate what salary expectations are, really understand the reasons behind it in the first interview, recap it in the second interview, find out what else they've got going on, what those jobs are doing, what they're paying, work with recruitment partners to make sure that the offer you put out there is one that's going to be works for you, but it's going to be acceptable to the candidate, because the market conditions are just too fast paced and volatile for anything other than that. If you're coming in trying to get candidates at the lower end of your range for a multitude of reasons, and some you may be in a situation where you need to do that from a commercial perspective.
And Mike, what usually happens is candidates ultimately feel undervalued. It's there is no getting away from that. From a candidate perspective, you want them to have, this is the best part that they've been waiting for. They're finally getting the job offer that they've been really excited, and when they aren't off salary and they've been clear,
they've been transparent
throughout, it just makes them feel uneasy, really, and that's not the kind of feeling that you want when you are starting a new job, when you're joining a business, because candidates don't forget that kind of thing. Some people in some instances, I've taken things like that, quite personal. So, I've definitely seen that, creep up, and it's not allowed us to work the best way effectively within this market.
Yeah, cool. Well, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Really good conversation, that Sam. Thought it was great, and hopefully the listeners will get a lot from it. Loads of actionable tips in there. And as we said at the beginning, guys, these are our experiences that we wanted to share with you. There's a huge amount of companies that are recruiting amazingly well, but we thought this type of podcast would give people a lot of value. So hopefully you've all got a lot from it.
Mike, really enjoyed that one. I think we went into quite a few points, loads of live examples in this very fast-paced January, but I'm hoping that, I'm quite confident that people will hopefully take what they can out of it. There are loads of companies doing great stuff. There's loads of success stories, but on the other end, there are some challenges. So hopefully that's been enjoyable for everyone.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll look forward to bringing another episode to you next week.
Cheers. See you soon.